Welcome to the Greg's Review Show today. Today we're going to get into a very, very important topic today. It's about trust and unbroken betrayal, man. It's crazy out here. Thumbs up, like and share this video. Please support us through Cash App. That's GRC mantrap. Any donation will be greatly appreciated. Whether it's 50 cents, a dollar, all that information is right there below. Thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. There you go, hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, we're going to get into this video really quickly. Here we go.
Imaginable betrayal. Strap in for a journey that unravels a shocking secret hidden beneath a holy facade. Welcome to Web Crime Stories XZ, where today we reveal how far one man would go to protect the darkest truth he never wanted anyone to see. Jonathan Cross was the preacher everyone admired. In his mid-30s, he was hailed as a pillar of faith, exuding a confidence that lit up every sermon he delivered. His flock believed in his teachings about righteousness and moral purity, teachings that drew them in with a fiery passion. He wasn't just a pastor to them, he was a shepherd guiding his congregation toward a life of holiness. But behind that pulpit of grace and conviction lived a man tormented by shame. Jonathan's early years were riddled with bullying and jeers. Other kids teased him for reasons he couldn't bear to reveal. Their words cut deep, leaving scars he hid under a thick shell of confidence. In his 20s, Jonathan found solace in religion. Joining the church as a preacher not only gave him purpose, but also allowed him to control his personal boundaries. His public stance on abstinence conveniently provided an explanation for why he kept romantic relationships at arm's length. To the world, he was a man of devout moral principle, but in reality, Jonathan Cross was guarding a secret that he feared would destroy him if ever exposed. Naomi Jones, on the other hand, was the embodiment of love and optimism. In her late 20s, she worked tirelessly as a teacher, shaping the minds of young children by day and volunteering at church events by night. Raised in a supportive family, Naomi treasured faith, integrity, and the beauty of lifelong commitment. When she first met Jonathan at a church service, she was instantly drawn to his captivating sermons and unwavering devotion to godly living. She saw in him the partner she had always hoped to find. As they courted, Jonathan insisted on waiting until marriage before any form of intimacy. Naomi found his conviction both challenging and admirable. While she sometimes wondered why he shied away from even small gestures of physical affection, she brushed aside her suspicions, choosing to trust that their bond was built on sacred principles. She never imagined these same principles were being twisted to cover up the one thing Jonathan feared the most. The day finally arrived, filled with high expectations from both families and the entire congregation. The wedding was an event of the year. Rows of fresh flowers and glowing candles decorated the church, and the choir's harmonies echoed through the vaulted ceiling. Every person in attendance believed they were witnessing a blessed union. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, Jonathan stood confidently, hiding his anxiety behind practiced smiles. Deep inside, dread simmered beneath his polished exterior. Radiant in her white gown, Naomi walked down the aisle with tears of joy glistening in her eyes. This was it, the moment she'd dreamed of since she was a little girl. She had zero reason to suspect the man waiting for her was hiding a life-altering lie. Vows were exchanged, prayers lifted, and the applause was thunderous. The reception that followed was a vibrant celebration with music, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Yet, all the while, Jonathan could only think about the night to come. For while everyone toasted the newlyweds, the preacher harbored a growing terror that his secret was about to blow everything apart. That night, the newlyweds arrived at their hotel suite, a room lavishly decorated with rose petals and soft candlelight, everything Naomi had ever dreamed of. She could hardly contain her excitement. She removed her veil gently and turned to Jonathan with a tender smile. For her, This moment was the culmination of their love story, a sacred moment she had waited for all her life. But the atmosphere changed the instant Jonathan stepped inside. He paused by the door, gripping the handle so tightly his knuckles turned white. Naomi sensed a tension, a cold wave of apprehension that clung to the air. Where she saw warmth and intimacy, Jonathan only felt impending doom. "Jonathan," Naomi whispered softly, stepping closer, "is everything okay?" His eyes darted nervously from the bed to the floor, then back to Naomi. He managed a shaky smile, but she could see sweat gathering at his hairline. The man who had delivered countless charismatic sermons suddenly appeared as fragile as glass, about to shatter. "I'm fine," he croaked, swallowing hard. "I just need a moment." They were finally alone. No congregation members or family around to witness what would happen next. Yet, despite all the secrecy he had carefully maintained, Jonathan feared he couldn't keep up the facade any longer. When the moment of intimacy approached, Naomi gently tried to reassure him, thinking his nerves were typical wedding jitters. But very quickly, she realized there was nothing typical about Jonathan's behavior. His face contorted with shame. He avoided her gaze, all but recoiling from her touch. Confusion flooded Naomi's mind. Hadn't their relationship been built on trust, faith, and mutual respect? Then, in a single, heart-stopping moment, the truth was laid bare before her. Naomi's eyes locked on the stark reality Jonathan had hidden behind fervent biblical teachings about abstinence. She recalled his vague explanations, his refusal for even the simplest displays of affection, hugs that were too short, kisses that never lingered. "Jonathan, I don't understand," she stammered, her voice trembling with shock. "All this time, you knew, but you never told me." Anger and bewilderment clashed inside Naomi as she stood face to face with the betrayal. It wasn't just about Jonathan's physical condition, it was the realization that every sermon, every moral stand he had taken, was partly a shield for his own insecurities. Pain pulsed through her veins as she comprehended the depth of his lie. "You lied to me, Jonathan. This entire marriage, this day, it's all built on deception," Naomi hissed, her voice quivering. "How could you?" Like a cornered animal, Jonathan grew desperate. His breath came in ragged bursts, and his words tumbled out, frantic and pleading. "I had no choice. You have to understand, and if people knew, they'd reject me, just like in the past. I've worked so hard to become the man everyone respects. No one would accept a preacher with my condition." His eyes brimmed with tears. He reached for her hands, trying to invoke the closeness they had shared before. But Naomi pulled away, disbelief etched on her face. "We're married now. Please, you have to stay," he implored, voice cracking. "The Bible teaches commitment, Naomi. We made vows before God." Naomi's heart twisted. She had always admired Jonathan's biblical convictions, but now she realized how he wielded them like a weapon to bind her. A wave of disbelief, mixed with heartbreak, flashed across her face. "Don't you dare use our faith against me," she warned, eyes blazing. "Marriage is about truth and trust. You gave me neither. Everything I believed about you, it's all a lie." Emotionally spent, Naomi sank down onto the edge of the bed, tears spilling onto her wedding gown. She felt sick, trapped between rage, sorrow, and the devastating understanding that her dream wedding was built upon quicksand. Meanwhile, Jonathan stood across the room, watching her in anguish. He knew that the moment she stepped out of that door, his life, his reputation, and every carefully guarded secret would crumble. The night was only beginning, and a storm of betrayal, fear, and desperation was about to unleash consequences neither of them could have imagined. The tension in the suite reached a suffocating peak. Naomi rose, pacing in frantic circles as she tried to gather her thoughts. Though her heart pounded violently in her chest, she knew she couldn't stay in this illusion another second. "I need to leave," she said finally, her voice raw with determination and heartbreak. We can figure out an annulment or a divorce. I don't care which. I'm not staying in a marriage built on deceit." Those words struck Jonathan like a thunderbolt. In a single moment, everything he feared came rushing to the surface. The cruel teasing from his childhood, the lingering shame about his body, and the terror of public humiliation if Naomi exposed the truth. He had spent years constructing a persona of unbreakable moral fibre, one he believed would never survive this revelation. "Naomi, wait," he begged, voice trembling. "You can't leave. Do you have any idea what that would do to me, to my reputation? The church, everyone would turn on me if they knew." He approached her cautiously, like a man negotiating a minefield. Naomi backed away, hands shaking as she shoved personal items into a suitcase. Her entire body trembled, but her resolve never faltered. "That's not my problem," she snapped, chin quivering. "You brought this on yourself when you lied to me. I'm telling everyone exactly who you are and what you did." Jonathan's breath quickened, beads of sweat lining his forehead. He stepped toward the door, effectively blocking Naomi's path. She stopped short, glaring at him, her tears replaced by burning anger. "Move!" she commanded, her voice harsh. "I'm done with you using faith as a shield for your lies." He didn't budge. Naomi's hand hovered near the doorknob, and for a second, the two stood frozen in a standoff of raw emotion. The overhead light flickered, casting shifting shadows across the lavishly decorated suite. In that flicker, Naomi saw Jonathan's eyes flash with something she had never seen before, genuine terror morphing into desperation. Suddenly, Jonathan lunged, gripping Naomi's arm with startling force. She cried out, her voice reverberating off the walls. The gentle man she thought she knew was gone, replaced by a panicked stranger consumed by self-preservation. "You can't leave!" he roared, gripping her tighter. "Don't you understand? I can't let you—" Naomi wrenched herself free, heart hammering. She'd never seen such unbridled anger in him. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase, trying to brush past him, but Jonathan seized her shoulders. His eyes were wide, reflecting a swirl of dread and rage. "Let go of me!" Naomi screamed, pushing against him. "You lied to me, Jonathan, and you want me to pretend everything's normal? Never!" Her words sliced through his last tether to rational thought. In a flurry of panic, he lashed out, striking Naomi across the face. The blow seemed to echo in the silence of the suite. Naomi staggered, her hand flying to her cheek in shock. Before she could recover, Jonathan shoved her backward. She stumbled over the edge of the bed, crashing to the floor. Her head collided with the wooden bed frame with a sharp, sickening thud. Jonathan stood over her, breathing heavily, blinking as though trying to wake from a nightmare. "Naomi?" he gasped, voice cracking. "Naomi, get up." But Naomi didn't move. A small pool of blood began to form beneath her head, soaking into the plush hotel carpet. Jonathan's chest tightened in horror. He had struck his bride on their wedding night, and the unthinkable was staring him in the face. Time slowed to a crawl. Jonathan knelt beside her, shaking her shoulders, tears now streaming down his face. He muttered prayers, pleas, anything that might turn back the clock. Yet Naomi's eyes remained closed, her body still. "Naomi, I didn't mean... please," he mumbled, voice thick with regret. But the suite remained silent, save for Jonathan's ragged breathing. The panic in his chest felt like it might burst his heart. He knew, deep down he knew, there would be no miracle to save him from the consequence of his own violence. And so began his desperate bid to escape the punishment he believed would surely follow. What he didn't yet realize was that no matter how fast or how far he ran, there would be no outrunning the truth. With Naomi motionless on the floor, Jonathan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He wanted to scream, to wake her up, to take back the last few minutes, but there was no turning back now. Fear seized his mind, and the self-preservation that had driven him to violence now propelled him into cover-up mode. Jonathan scanned the room with wild eyes, searching for any evidence that might link him directly to Naomi's death. He wiped down door handles, rearranged furniture, and tried to conceal the traces of blood on the floor. But in his panic, the cleanup was haphazard. The overturned lamp, the scattered rose petals, and the splatter near the bed remained glaring signs of a struggle. Tossing a few clothes and personal items into a small duffel bag, Jonathan slipped into the hallway. He pressed his ear against the door to ensure no one was outside, then bolted down the corridor toward the emergency exit. Hotel surveillance cameras captured him running, disheveled and frantic, glancing over his shoulder as if pursued by invisible demons. Morning dawned on an eerie silence in the honeymoon suite. The housekeeper, making her routine rounds, knocked on the door multiple times with no response. Using her key, she entered, and immediately dropped her cleaning supplies with a scream. Naomi's lifeless body lay on the floor, her wedding gown stained red, a grim contrast against the plush carpet. Other hotel guests and staff rushed over upon hearing the housekeeper's anguished cries. Confusion and panic spread through the corridors, and an eerie hush descended over what had been a celebratory atmosphere just hours before. Calling the authorities, hotel management quickly phoned emergency services. Police and paramedics arrived to a disturbing scene. Flowers trampled, furniture in disarray, and the blood marking Naomi's final moments of life. The investigators, led by a seasoned detective named Evelyn Martinez, meticulously combed the suite for evidence. They noted the partially packed suitcase, the scattered rose petals, and Jonathan's abandoned tie on the floor. Each item suggested a frantic and unfinished departure. Hotel key logs showed no sign of forced entry, implying the victim knew her attacker. Security footage from the halls confirmed Jonathan's identity, capturing his hurried, almost frantic escape in the early morning hours. Hotel staff remembered the newlyweds checking in with apparent joy. Some recalled seeing Naomi in the hallway, radiant and excited for the night ahead. Another staff member mentioned that Jonathan looked tense and was overheard making a cryptic phone call, but no one thought much of it at the time. Community shock. Word spread rapidly. The same congregation that had witnessed the couple's vows the day before found itself reeling with horror. Jonathan Cross, the esteemed preacher, was nowhere to be found, and Naomi Jones, beloved teacher and volunteer, was dead. Speculation ignited like wildfire. Had Jonathan snapped? Had he always been dangerous? Friends and parishioners who attended the wedding came forward with hushed whispers of Jonathan's odd tension during the reception. Determined to find Naomi's killer, Detective Martinez issued an APB, all points bulletin, for Jonathan Cross. Local news stations broadcast his photo, urging the public to come forward with any information. Meanwhile, the police pieced together Jonathan's possible escape routes. Credit card transactions revealed a stop at a distant gas station, where surveillance footage showed Jonathan buying junk food and water, still wearing the same dress shirt he had on at the wedding. With each hour that passed, the public's outrage swelled. Naomi's face, once alight with hope, was now shown on the evening news as a murder victim. Her grieving family made a tearful plea for justice, recounting how they had danced with her just hours before the tragedy. Hiding out in cheap motels and abandoned rest stops, Jonathan was tormented by flashbacks of the fatal blow. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Naomi's expression of betrayal, and each time he could only think, "I never meant to kill her, but I couldn't let her ruin me." For nearly a week, Jonathan stayed on the run, changing motels and borrowing older vehicles from unsuspecting acquaintances. But no matter how far he drove, the image of Naomi's lifeless form clung to him, a haunting reminder that he was running from a crime that had no absolution. Detective Martinez finally got the break she needed when a clerk at a rundown roadside motel recognized Jonathan from the news. Shaken by the intense manhunt coverage, the clerk discreetly contacted authorities. Within an hour, The parking lot was swarming with unmarked police cars. Jonathan, dishevelled and emotionally spent, offered no resistance when officers stormed his motel room. "I knew you'd find me," he murmured, voice devoid of fight. It was just a matter of time. As Jonathan Cross was taken into custody, the community he had once led in prayer and worship struggled to reconcile the gentle pastor they knew with the man suspected of murdering his new bride. Churchgoers gathered in small groups, exchanging hushed words about the tragedy. Some prayed for Naomi's family, while others wrestled with anger and confusion toward Jonathan. The trial took place under intense media scrutiny, with reporters camped outside the courthouse each day. The prosecution wasted no time laying out its evidence. Grainy hotel videos showed Jonathan fleeing the scene. Physical evidence, fingerprints on Naomi's suitcase and the hotel doorknob placed him at the epicenter of the crime. Friends and family testified to Jonathan's sudden mood shifts. Some had noticed he was uncomfortable with physical affection, though they'd never imagined it would lead to violence. The prosecution called Naomi's closest friends to the stand. One tearfully recounted Naomi's giddy excitement leading up to the wedding. She believed she'd found her soulmate. She admired Jonathan's devotion to faith. She had no idea. A history of deception. Former congregants spoke of subtle manipulations in Jonathan's sermons, claiming he used the church's teachings on chastity to mask his own insecurities. Jonathan's legal team tried to frame the killing as a tragic accident, a moment of blind panic, fueled by years of shame. They called psychiatrists, who painted Jonathan as a deeply damaged individual, haunted by childhood bullying, and driven to drastic measures when faced with the threat of rejection. "He never intended for Naomi to die," one defense attorney declared. "He was terrified of losing everything: his marriage, his reputation, his life's work." Family members from both sides filled the benches, the tension in the gallery almost unbearable. Naomi's parents, drained by grief, clutched hands and wept quietly whenever the prosecution displayed photos of their daughter's final moments. At one point, Jonathan broke down in tears while on the stand, insisting he just couldn't let her leave, and that everything spiraled out of control. Public reaction. Outside, angry protesters demanded justice for Naomi. Some bore signs reading "No mercy for murderers," while others decried Jonathan's hypocrisy in weaponizing faith for personal gain. Every revelation about Jonathan's body insecurities and his manipulation of church doctrine ignited another round of headlines. The sensational aspects of the case sparked debates about transparency, trust, and the dangers of hiding crucial truths in a relationship. After weeks of searing testimony, emotional witnesses, and expert opinions, the jury announced its unanimous decision. Jonathan Cross was guilty of second-degree murder. His hollow expression and trembling shoulders spoke volumes as the judge pronounced the sentence: life in prison. "Your actions," the judge stated, "were not only a breach of trust, but a cruel deception culminating in a tragic loss of life. This court believes the severity of your crime demands the maximum penalty." Naomi's family, holding each other for support, let out muffled sobs as relief and sorrow collided in their hearts. They had justice.
As you can see, family, fair use of this video. These cats out here, you gotta start living in your truth. If you're not living in your truth and you get married, whatever, you're deceiving this young lady. Unfortunately, this young lady lost her life. That's terrible because this guy wasn't living in his truth. He wasn't up front, up forward with what was going on. And this is a tragic situation in any marriage or any situation when you're not living in your truth. So, ladies and gentlemen, please live in your truth. Tell the truth, who you are, where you are, what you do, what you're all about. Be honest with yourself. But most important, be honest with your friend or mate. God bless you. Thumbs up, like and share this video. Please support us through Cash App, as you can see, GREC $mantrap, 50 cents, or whatever God puts on your heart to support our channel. We'll greatly appreciate it. And hit that subscribe button right there below. There you go. Hit that subscribe button. God bless you. And See you next week with a wonderful, wonderful topic.